Hello, everyone, and welcome to Really Old Movies. I'm your host, Harrison Scullin, and today I'll be discussing Lawrence of Arabia from 1962, starring Peter O'Toole and directed by David Lean. All right, so now let me get into some behind-the-scenes details about Lawrence of Arabia. From IMDb, Ken Hussein of Jordan lent an entire brigade of his Arab Legion as extras for this movie, so most of the film's quote-unquote soldiers were actual soldiers. Hussein frequently visited the set and became enamored of a young British secretary, Antoinette Gardner, who became his second wife in 1962. Their eldest son, Abdullah II, King of Jordan, ascended to the throne in 1999. So that's a pretty interesting detail that this led to an eventual leader of Jordan, a leader in Arabia. Another detail, to film Omar Sharif's entrance through a mirage, Freddie Young used a special 482mm lens from Panavision. Panavision still has this lens, and it is known among cinematographers as the David Lean lens. It was created specifically for the shot and has not been used since. So those are some pretty interesting details, especially about the camera there, or the lens rather. Pretty interesting that they've never really used it again. They've only used it for that one moment. I hope it's in a museum somewhere, because I know Panavision rather has it. I hope they have it in a museum. I think that's a pretty important historical thing right there. But let's get into my thoughts on the plot. Okay, so the plot, I give it a 4 out of 5. So I'll be honest. I like the history and the story as a whole of the real person, T.E. Lawrence. I think it's pretty interesting. It's very much a coming-of-age story. It's a very political film. It's a war film. Very interesting in that way. But I'll be frank, I think the first half of the movie is much more engaging and interesting, at least to me, than the second half. To me, the second half kind of drags on a little bit too long and could have been trimmed down a bit. Depending which version you watch, I think I saw the 3.5-hour version. So I've seen this film 3 or 4 times. I've even reviewed it on my older channel. It just seems a tad bit long for me. I think it kind of loses steam. But that's why I gave the plot a 4 out of 5. I really like the idea and the story. A man, stranger in a strange land, right? Going from being a British officer to then being an Arab leader, essentially. I think that's interesting for sure. And it really happened, too, for the most part, right? I don't know how historically accurate the film really is. I'd have to read a book about T.E. Lawrence, but I still find it interesting as a whole. But I definitely think parts of the film could have been cut out. Definitely in the last half, there's only so many train robberies that could be interesting. I think there was like 4 or 5, I want to say. I think just 2 or 3 would have been fine. But that's just me. But that's why I gave the plot a 4 out of 5. So now let's move on to the acting. Okay, so the acting, I also gave it a 4 out of 5. I think Omar Sharif, who's pictured on the right there, is amazing. He's the best actor, one of the best actors in the film. I think his character is interesting and intriguing. And the brief moments, Claude Rains is in it. I like him. The brief moments that, is it Terrence Young? I think that's his name, one of the British actors. The very, very few moments we see with Alec Guinness are good. But I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest Peter O'Toole fan. He might be accurate to the actual T.E. Lawrence, so I'll give him credit there. He looks like the guy in the picture at least. I don't know. There's just something I've always felt odd with his acting. I always felt he was a little strange, but I mean, maybe he's playing the character very well then, if that's the case. I don't know. I'm just not the biggest fan of it. I like all the characters around him more than I like him because his performance is a little over the top and they feed into the legend of the character, which is cool. I do wish we saw a little bit more of his development. I don't know. I just wasn't as huge of a fan of him as I was with Omar Sharif. But that's just me. That's the acting, 4 out of 5. Okay, let's move on to the directing. So David Lean directed this film. 5 out of 5. I think this is his best film, in my opinion. Because I've seen Dr. Zhivago, Bridge and River Kwai. I really like that one too. Brief Encounter. Let's see. Summertime. Blithe Spirit. I've seen all those films, but this one to me is his magnum opus for sure. I love the way he sets up the movie. I love where, the set pieces. I love for the most part, on location in the Arab desert. I think he does a masterful job here. And like I said, the first half of the movie is the most interesting, most intriguing to me. You could definitely see where, oh my goodness, what's his name? The writer of Dune, he was heavily inspired by this movie. You could definitely see that here. I think David Lean did a great job here. 5 out of 5, perfect. Yeah, it's just really, really good. It is my favorite film of his for sure. Okay, now we're talking about cinematography and special effects. I also gave that a 5 out of 5. This is one of the most beautifully shot films ever. There's scenes like this with the beautiful lush colors, the real costumes. There's, those extras, like I was saying earlier, are real people, or real soldiers rather. And they had real horses, real camels. It's a beautifully shot film, especially the scenes in the desert. Even the scenes in the palaces look great too. All around, it's a beautifully shot film. I got to see this on HBO Max in 4K. It looked incredible. I would love to see this movie in a theater because I want to say a few years ago it was being played, 70 millimeter with a live orchestra. I want to do that so bad. I would love to see that. So the camera work is incredible here. There's some famous scenes, where he's holding a match and it changes to the rising sun. That's pretty cool. The classic scene with Omar Sharif's character coming into frame, one I was mentioning earlier. That's a beautiful shot. But honestly, to me, the best ones are actually the battle scenes where they're going over the hills on the horses and shooting and fighting and all that and attacking the train. I really like that. It's cool. I could have used less of it for sure, but that very first one where he's like, come on, man, all of that seems fantastic. It's a beautifully put together set pieces, all that. You really feel like you're in this time period. It did not feel like we were in the 60s at all. It's a great shot, great put together, all around great film. All right, let's move on to the music. 5 out of 5. The music from this movie is so iconic. It's so important for the character of Lawrence, in my opinion. It's just like everything else in the movie, kind of building up the legend of him because it feels a little mystical and kind of triumphant and whatnot, and just keeps crescendoing. And it's really, really good. I loved it. It's some of my favorite music. It is super iconic, and it fits in every scene that it's in. It's amazing. One of my favorite. I actually listen to the soundtrack to it sometimes. It's one of my favorites, especially the best scene with it is when Lawrence comes back from saving the guy that they abandoned in the desert and starts playing that. That's the best scene with it, in my opinion. It was amazing. Great score. I'm going to keep listening to it forever, man. It's incredible. All right. So my overall score, tallying that all up, brings it to a 4.6 out of 5, which I'm rounding to a 5 out of 5, which means it's a 92% on Criticless. Let me break down my Criticless score. So graphic language, not really. It's very, very tame. Violence, there is blood, there's murder, there's killing and whatnot. It's war, pretty violent, some shooting. Characters blown off screen, with bombs and stuff. But nothing explicit. It's very, very tame, for sure. But it doesn't mean it isn't, crazy intense. Like the scene where he pulls out his sword, he's like, no prisoners, no prisoners. It's a pretty horrifying scene, but also pretty awesome at the same time. Okay, in regards to nudity, sexual content, None. Um, it definitely feels like they're hinting that Lawrence might be gay. I don't know if he really was or not. Not that that matters, but I think it if that were the case, it just adds on to kind of the character he is, being kind of an outcast. They talk about in the film, right? He's doesn't fit in with the British, but doesn't fit in with the Arabs either. He's kind of his own man. Um, but like I said, there is no nudity, nothing like that at all. Okay, in regards to political bias, so this is a very interesting one. Is it left? Is it right? Is it center? Is there any politics in it? I think it really depends. Because for me, I kind of see it as a slightly left leaning. Um, but that's just my perceptions of today, right? But it could also be seen as right. I don't know if it's truly political like the way we think of it would be, because his whole goal is to liberate Arabia and have it be kind of independent from the British Raj and or not British Raj, but just the British control, and also free from the Turks. So I guess it just depends where you lean in the World War One conflict. Are you more on the side of the British, or are you more on the side with the Turks? I guess that's a real question. So it's political in that sense, because this is a movie about diplomacy. It's a movie about, uh, regime changes and just how fickle war can be and how maps get changed and divided and whatnot. So it's political in that sense, but I don't know if it really has any bias per se, because it's based on real events. So deal with that what you will. Okay, in regards to family friendly, I would like to hope so. I think I will just say no, not because it's overtly violent, overtly sexual, nothing like that. I think 3 hours and 32 minutes, I think that's what it is a hard sell for kids. Because Lord of the Rings, for example, yeah, there are talking moments, but there's a lot of action and epic moments. Even in the dialogue moments, it's interesting. I'm afraid kids would be bored with this movie, especially considering if they don't know anything about World War One. I think they'd be kind of left in the dust, confused. But this could be a good teaching opportunity. It's definitely not 100% historically accurate. Historical movies tend to not be. Um, Maybe for my kids, it will be family friendly. I think for most kids, no, though. But if you are going to introduce, maybe wait until they're in middle school, high school, so that they kind of understand more of what the conflict is going on and what it is. That's just my take on it. All right, in regards to entertainment value, I think it's very entertaining. Like I said, this is my favorite David Lean film, and probably one of my favorite World War One films in general. I think it's a great character study. It's great at showing, you know, with a lot of historical figures, we have like this mythic idea of what they were like and who they were and whatnot. This movie kind of tackles that. It talks about it, right? Because Lawrence, he wasn't perfect, right? He made mistakes. His choices led to the death of many of his friends. He killed innocent people at some point. So he's not a perfect person, but the legend of Lawrence is very mythical, right? So it's kind of talking about that and approaching that. And the film doesn't really have a definitive answer on how you should feel about it. It lets you think about it, and I really appreciate that. I hate when movies try to make you think a certain way. This helps. This presents an opinion, presents what it is, but leaves you to interpret from there. So yeah, very, very entertaining, at least for me. All right. Well, would I recommend this movie? Absolutely. I love this movie. I may not I like the plot. Like, I give it a 4 out of 5. I really do like it. It's not perfect. And I do think there are moments that could have been trimmed out. This could have been a solid 3-hour movie. I don't think it really needed to be as long as it was. Because if you think of movies like Gone with the Wind, that movie, I think, benefits from being long like that. This movie, I think, doesn't. Because there are moments that drag out. A lot of repetitive scenes really could have been trimmed out. I believe the version I saw is the restored one, because there is a theatrical and a restored version. So I guess your mileage may vary. Just depends which version you would prefer. But I really love this movie. I highly recommend it. And if you haven't seen it, you need to check it out. I believe it's still on HBO Max. It might be gone now, but it's always streaming somewhere. It's a very, very popular film. All right. Well, those are my thoughts overall on Lawrence of Arabia from 1962, starring Peter O'Toole and directed by David Lean. This has been Really Old Movies. I'm your host, Harrison Scullin. Take care.